Hello and welcome back. So in the first part of this episode, we spoke about experiences with code switching, but in this section, we want to talk about quote unquote the why. Okay, and I want to start with a really small story. Mahima, I don't think you know this, but I have two beautiful nieces, Madhvi and Nandini. They are really tiny. I think they're 4 and 6 years of age, obsessed with Peppa Pig and obsessed with me. So I was babysitting them one day and they were hanging out in my room and they have all of those, their little dinosaur, little figurines, and they're playing, they're doing their whole pretend play and everything. And I was noticing them, okay? And they're talking, they're doing their pretend play and everything. And Madhvi said a few sentences and then she suddenly said, "Oops, sorry." And I was like, "What happened?" And she was like, nothing. And then she started the game again, but in a British accent, okay? And it was like completely bizarre to me. I was like, "Wait, what?" So she literally stopped her game, went back, restarted it because she wanted to speak in a British accent. And she's 6 years old, so obviously she's not making these connections in her brain. But as a communications and media student who understands how media affects us on a daily basis, I was like, wait, this girl is watching completely British and American shows. She's listening to language from the lens of American and British people. And she is, from this very age, internalizing that this is the way to talk. This is how you're supposed to behave, or this is the right way to talk in English. And I obviously couldn't stop her because I can't stop her from watching all of those shows. And Mahima, it made me think about me and about where my biases and my accent and all of this, discomfort stems from. And I realized when we were growing up, Disney was very new in India. I think Love, Raghavi, Radhika was still pretty young. They were like younger than 10. I was like 11-ish years of age when Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Hannah Montana, all of these.
And That's So Raven.
That's So Raven, Wizards of Waverly Place. And I know every single Indian person listening to this podcast right now can relate to the fact that looking at those shows, we all thought America was the baddest bitch in town. Okay, like America is the place to be. Like girls are wearing whatever they want, like they can kiss, boys are coming over to these, parents' house and everything is okay. मैं इतनी पिटती थी boyfriend के नाम पे.
मेरे घर में लड़का आ जाए ना, मेरे पापा बाहर घूम रहे होते थे, ठीक है, दरवाजा नहीं बंद हो सकता था,
Exactly.
लॉक निकाल दिया था मेरे पापा ने, रूम का लॉक नहीं था.
Exactly. So just how Madhvi was experiencing that at 6 years of age, I experienced that cultural window at 11, 12 years of age, where I am, of course, very impressionable. So obviously in that time, I wasn't thinking about my accent or anything. And let me just clarify here, guys, accent is just our getaway behavior to explain this whole episode. That's not the focus of this episode, but it's just that anchor that is helping us explain a lot of things. But anyway, I started to realize that this is where my idea of cool Americans come from. And this is why I felt discomfort as I grew up, as I was exposed to more, diverse situations at Purdue or at USC, where I felt this need to quote unquote impress white people, to impress people of color, impress Americans, because I want them to see me as cool, because I am associating them with the coolness that I was brought up with. And that is where conditioning comes in. Okay. I think, there are so many definitions for conditioning, but it's just internalized beliefs. That is it. It is just something that you have internalized in your subconscious so much that it's very difficult to separate it consciously, which is what happened with me. Okay. Ab tu bol kuch. Sorry. So media, entertainment, So media is one of the biggest sources of conditioning that we have. Like you see that in India right now, all the news that our grandparents are seeing, they are conditioned to believe that Hindu people are at, kya bolte hai usko? They are at, what's the fucking, why can't I do English?
Risk.
They are at risk. They are at risk, but the ruling majority of the country is at risk. And they truly believe that because they are conditioned to believe that. So I really believe, Mahims, at least for me, and I think for most people, a lot of these feelings come from this sort of cultural conditioning, which may manifest in different ways, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think I want to now, like, piggybacking on what you just said, I feel like we are conditioned. It's because of this whole, how you told about Madhi being thinking British accent is superior. I think it runs deeper than that. And like, think about it, Indians as a community is just, we are just conditioned in so many ways, like, fairness creams, because you're white color, it's just so romanticized, that from my personal experience, when I moved to Belgium, and my really, really good friend, who's Flemish, Belgian, she would introduce me to her Flemish friends. She would initially say something like, "Oh, this is Mahima. She's from India, but she's not a typical Indian that you know." And for a good split second, I would feel good about it because of the conditioning that we've been doing since, like trying harder to fit into having more white friends and just not being that typical Appu Indian that, is shown on televisions and stuff. And initially, when I would feel good about it, but this, after the split second, I would be like, no, like, it is actually not something to be happy about, because I have grown up, the type of life I live, the choices I make, things I do, is very actually similar to so many of Indians around me. All my single friends, people I know, people's friends I know. So this whole stereotypical idea that has been shown to the world is where I think the conditioning is so deep rooted, and we are on the receiving end of this. We are on the cons of code switching.
Right.
Would,
I think
would that
what
make
you
sense?
said is very interesting. I think, Mema, you have mentioned to me once that, so many people compliment you for looking Mexican or Moroccan or European, especially in Belgium.
I want to mention, I went on a date and the guy, oh yeah, like this, oh yeah. So, another thing is that so many times I've been told that I don't look like an Indian when I go out on dates. And one guy actually asked me, "Do you even identify yourself as an Indian?" And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because of the lifestyle choices you have. You're not a very timid girl that, typical Indians are supposed to be. And you're pretty independent and blah, 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 blah." And I said, I mean, that is such a sad, but narrow and sad, but real, very, very real opinion of Indians in the world.
Correct. And what you said was very interesting to me because, like you said, it's not just how other people view us, it's also about how we view ourselves. And touching on the fairness aspect, it has happened with me too. When people tell you, "Oh, badi kitni gori hai, kitni gori hai." When I was a kid, I thought this is something I'm supposed to be happy about. And as I grow older, I have to force myself to detach myself from that quote unquote identity. Being Gora is not Indian, and being Gora has nothing to do with you as a person, but that colorism is so internalized within us. And I must mention right now that North Indians, especially, we are so fucking racist. Like, we are so racist towards Indian people also within our own Indian community. I can tell, like, I can think of at least 10 people right now who have made fun of South Indians' accents, who have made fun of how sometimes, Northeast Indians would dress. Chinky chinky jo hum bolte rehte hain Assamese logo ko ya Northeast wale logo ko. These are all things that we practice ourselves. And, it's interesting that when we are put in that position in a global world, we feel uncomfortable. And then it forces you to think how these things are happening अपने खुद के घर पे, and हम लोग बाहर जाके रो रहे हैं. So I think
Kishan, I would like to really add on that I just don't think, like, within Indian community, if you look at a global scale, like recently I went on a dinner with 4 of my different colleagues, and one of them, so on the table there was one Indian, me, one Belgian, one Romanian, and one Bulgarian. Although Bulgarian, Romanian, and Belgium, those are all parts of Europe, I was told by my Romanian, very much white-looking friend, that when she moved to Belgium, she was initially hesitant to tell people that she's from Romania. And the same experience comes from my Bulgarian colleague and my Turkish friend. Like, she would tell people she's from Bulgaria. Like, there are levels of it. Like, how
hierarchy
the world.
correct. Yeah.
And of course, this all really comes from how the world has been, the world orders we have seen in the past, and for thousands of years. Of course, most of the white communities or like countries were the people who would go and rule over people of color. So I think this has been. It's really sad that it's 2023 and we still see this.
Mahima, you're right. Like, it really stems from history and just how we are conditioned to believe, into believing that white people are better. I assume that they are also conditioned to believe that they are better. And I would say I don't blame them 100%. I blame them for ignorance in this day and age, like you said, but I don't blame them 100% because if you and I are not able to, break through that conditioning, imagine the person who thinks he's the king of the world. Why would they want to break through that conditioning? But what happens is that as people of color, we experience these tiny, tiny, tiny microaggressions that in individuality may mean nothing, but when it all comes together, they make you feel small. And then it manifests you not wanting to be friends with Americans or white people because you don't want to feel small, even if they don't, quote unquote, mean to make you feel small. Right? And there are a lot of these microaggressions. All my Asian friends, none of them use their Asian name anymore. And I understand that it's difficult. Their names are tough. But if we can pronounce like croissant and like, hordivore, I don't even know how to pronounce that, HORSDEVOURS, whatever. If you can, whatever, you can pronounce all this French fucking stuff, but you're not choosing to pronounce this Asian stuff, is because you don't see the value in learning that person's name, but you see value in learning about this fancy French dish that will make you yourself feel cool. So what I mean to say is that while I don't want to blame white people 100%, these microaggressions, like the Starbucks person always writing my name wrong, or, the Uber people always getting excited that, oh, you're from India and you speak such good English. These little things.
Bro, मेरे भाई ने तो अपना नाम ऑफिशियली माँ बाप ने उसका नाम वैभव रखा था, पूरा वो नाम का विसर्जन एंड ऑल भी कराया था, इतने पैसे पंडित को बुलाया. माय ब्रदर वेंट टू अमेरिका, वो 10 साल से उनको वी बोलता है. Why? Because Americans cannot pronounce Weber.
Yeah.
So that's just crazy. Like, he's like, no, we sounds cooler also. Like when my American friends call me, like I feel like much cooler. His name was given to him by his frat friend, like his frat brothers. So since then, he's never really shed that thought. He's never even tried to correct someone to say it Weber.
So imagine how crazy it is that we are more comfortable in shedding our identity to make lives of privileged people even more easier than take the effort into maintaining our identity, because we are scared of being judged. We are scared of being, discriminated against, to be honest. I told you what happened at Trader Joe's with me. And I'll tell you in a really short way, okay? I was in line, standing 1 feet away from this guy who's not wearing a mask, nothing. He just shuffled when he saw me, okay? And I was like, whatever, I ignored it. I walked 1 step further because he was about to go 1 step further to go to the next cashier. And he turns around, looks me straight in my eye and says, can you like stand a bit away from me? You're too close to me. And I just, like froze in that place for a second. Now, maybe I stank that day and he could like, he just wanted me to be away. But in that moment, I 100% knew as a person of color that on some level he's discriminating against me. Even if he wasn't, that's how strong my feeling was. So my past experiences must have put me into this position somehow, And if
I think it's just not your
sorry.
And I think it's just not your past experience. I think it's what we see in the media, right? News every day, some racial, like it's very much evident out. That's not something we are making up or gaslighting ourselves with. We have good data out, which really, really indicates how much it still exists.
Yeah. And while me and Mahima can't combat the ignorance of the world, and I accept that, me and her might also be ignorant about a lot of things that we are not aware of, but I think we can all say that as minorities, as people of color, we are more open to learning things about different cultures as opposed to the privileged race in that society. And I think that really, really needs to change. So if you are someone who has white friends or who has more international friends, I'm sure you're already making them understand what India is for what India is. We are a country of like, 1.4 billion people. There is no typical Indian. Every Indian is so fucking different that I hope that we are able to reach a point where we are proud of our identity, and not just from a big fat Indian wedding perspective or a Bollywood perspective, but in a very holistic perspective.
Yeah, and I remember, Kishi, one time you were telling me about this experience where you had like you told me that you made the slides for about India in your communication class, and in those 10 slides, you explained India better than those 50 people in the class ever knew about it,
That was a really good presentation, and I'm going to try and pull it up and put it on YouTube if you guys are watching on YouTube. But in a sense, that presentation was 10 memes probably made by like American people. I wouldn't call them just white people, but very, very funny and ignorant memes about, train mein school jana and hathi mein school jana and like all that kind of crap. And in that entire class for the whole semester, every presentation that I gave, I was like, I'm going to talk about India. And those kids, I'm not joking, towards the end, they came and thanked me. I was the only brown person in that class anyway, but every single white person came to me towards the end and they wrote in my peer review that we never saw India this way. Because as much as we are conditioned by our media, they are conditioned by their media. So all they are seeing about India is all the dirt and all the poverty and all of the, they only want to feel sorry for us and they think हम लोग कहीं अलग ही दुनिया से आते, third world country, and they have
there's a reason Slumdog Millionaire became so big and it, like got like because they were selling poverty, they were selling, and that's what they, that movie got Oscar. Okay, yeah, fine, it was an okay story and good acting, but it was really selling poverty of India, which really made a lot of non-Indians happy and like, oh wow, oh my god, there's like fucking cow on the road.
And that's why I feel so bad about Indians trolling RRR. Whether you liked the movie or didn't like the movie or you hated the movie, because of that one grand movie, Americans are looking at India in such a different way, and not in a way that, oh, ye log kitne cool hai, but they're actually able to experience our culture, our grandioseness, our opulence in a manner that they had never done before. Mahima, I'm not joking. RRR is still playing in American theaters. Rajmouli just came last week. It was completely sold out with white people. Sairam went and watched it, and he said it was just white people, and they were having a bloody ball. It went viral in Japan. That's how much of a cultural impact that movie had. So as a Indian who knows how, people look at us, this group of artists have tried to establish and carve, this image of India on a global stage, and you're going to make fun of him for rolling a bloody R? Like, fuck you, That's what bothers me. But anyway, I think we've bashed Americans and white people enough. Hopefully you understand that wasn't the objective. But it's honest, I do have a few white friends. I love them dearly, but I'm able to say these things to them on their face also, and they understand. And I think that is very telling about the kind of people that they are. So yeah.
And I think I hope from this podcast, what we really, really want the main takeaway to be is that it's just important to be aware and talk about these things, because tying back to our sister Ravi, who came up to us with this idea about code switching, when she said it out loud and we discussed about the extent, the past, and how the ways she can deal with it. She actually went to work next day and she was like, actually, just by talking about it and being aware of it and bringing it into my conscious mind, I feel much more comfortable to be myself. Just because I had these conversations. So I think the whole idea to talk about the conditioning and the crab mentality is to basically just start the conversations.
It's like opening a can of worms. This is not an all exhaustive summary of every international person's experience, but I feel like just opening that little window, forcing ourselves to tackle these sensitive topics which we are scared to talk about because we are fearful that they can be offensive, because we are fearful that they will not be understood. Hopefully we have been able to do that for you. So and also because we are two incredible internet didis waiting to give you some advice. While talking about these things are important, and I do agree that for Ragvi, just understanding this was enough to break through these type of walls that she had built for herself. Literally, she came back and she's like, "Aaj to maine kya jokes mare, aapko samajh nahi aa raha, like bahut maza aaya mujhe." Which was like, just imagine, like this is a 30-40 minute podcast, a 5-minute conversation with her changed it for her. But we want to
elevated her. Like now, just because she talked about it, it's going to elevate her experience of being and working for that company, and just experience of just being. Like once you really, really consciously look into these things, your experience of being and all these like thoughts, which are thoughts are not thousands of thoughts you think in your head are not true. Just to be able to invalidate them and not internalize. I think that's just the first step towards dealing with this sort of environment we live in. I don't know.
Absolutely. And so for our last and final section, we want to give you 4 very, very actionable steps that will help you navigate these, interracial relationships and conversations, whether they be with your, college friends, whether they be with your colleagues, whether they be with, anybody that you interact with on a global scale.